My husband had an affair, and I forgave him. Or at least, that's what he thought. One night, I came home late, smiling. He asked, "Where were you?" I whispered back, "Doing what you did to me." His face went white as he realized. He was no longer the only cheater in this marriage. I never thought I'd be writing something like this. But here I am. I'm 43. Married for 17 years. We live in Indianapolis. 2 kids, both boys, 14 and 11. I work as a nurse at IU Health. My husband, Mark, works in marketing. And 1 year ago, my world turned upside down. It started on a Tuesday. I had just finished a 12-hour shift. Exhausted, head pounding, scrubs still on. I walked into our house around 10:15 p.m. The lights were off, but I saw the glow of Mark's phone on the kitchen counter. Usually, he keeps it in his pocket or face down. That night, it was face up, screen bright. A message lit up. "I miss the way you kissed me in the elevator today." At first, I just froze. I thought maybe I was reading it wrong. Then another one popped up. "Can't wait to feel you again. Tomorrow?" I picked up the phone. I didn't even think. I just started scrolling. He had an entire chat thread with someone named Alyssa. I saw pictures. Her face. Her body. I saw messages going back months. They joked about me. About our boring life. About how she won't suspect anything. One of the texts said, "It's not cheating if it's the only thing keeping me sane in that house." That line snapped something inside me. Mark came through the door maybe 5 minutes later. He was smiling, holding a gas station coffee. I held up the phone without a word. He looked at it, then at me. He didn't speak. I asked, "Who is Alyssa?" He didn't answer. I said, "Don't lie. I've seen everything." Then he started apologizing. Said it was just flirting at first. That it got out of hand. That it wasn't love. That he didn't mean to hurt me. He cried. He begged. He even dropped to his knees. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I was too tired. I just walked upstairs and locked the bedroom door. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. I kept replaying those texts over and over again in my head. I looked at Mark and saw someone I didn't know. He swore it was over. He said he blocked her. Deleted her number. Switched departments. Offered to quit his job if I wanted. Said he would go to therapy. Said he'd do anything to fix it. I wasn't sure I wanted to fix anything. We told the kids we were going through something and might need space. I didn't want them to know the real reason, not yet. They're old enough to pick up on tension, but too young to understand betrayal like this. I told Mark I'd stay. For now. We started couples therapy. Tuesday nights. Tiny office. Leather couch. Therapist with soft voice and lots of tissues. I talked. He talked. We cried. I thought I'd start to feel better. I didn't. I wasn't healing. I was waiting. Every time he touched me, I remembered her texts. Every time he kissed me, I remembered how he kissed her in that damn elevator. I stopped trusting him. I didn't check his phone. I didn't spy. I didn't need to. The damage was already done. What bothered me most was how easily he lied. How casual he was about us. Our family. Our history. He didn't just cheat on me. He humiliated me. I felt stupid. Like a fool. And I kept it all inside. I smiled for the kids. I showed up at work. I made dinner. I let him believe I was moving forward. But inside, I was slipping away. Then something changed. I joined a local gym. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I couldn't sit in that house anymore. I needed something that was mine. Somewhere to go that didn't smell like betrayal. That's where I met Chris. Chris is 46. Divorced. 2 kids. No drama. We started talking after a spin class. It was innocent. At first. Just small talk. Then longer talks. Then lunch after workouts. He asked how long I'd been married. I told him. He said, "You seem sad." And I was. He never pressured. Never flirted. He just listened. Asked questions. Remembered my answers. I felt like someone saw me again, not as a wife, not as a mom, just as me. It felt dangerous. And safe. All at once. Weeks passed. Then one night after a long walk around the canal, he brushed my hand with his. I didn't pull away. I told Mark I had an overnight shift. He kissed me on the forehead and said, "Be safe. I love you." I looked him in the eyes and said, "You too." I went to Chris's place instead. It wasn't like in the movies. There were no candles or music. Just silence and tension and months of pain finally cracking open. He was gentle. I cried after. He held me and didn't say a word. When I got home the next morning, Mark was making pancakes. He said, "You look tired." I said, "Long shift." He kissed my cheek. I felt nothing. It wasn't just one time. Chris and I kept seeing each other. Not constantly. Just enough. Just quietly. I started smiling more. Laughing again. Even coworkers noticed. Mark thought I was finally healing. That therapy was working. That maybe we were getting back to normal. He had no idea. Then one night, I came home late. Mark was on the couch, wearing old sweatpants, drinking a beer, and watching some rerun on ESPN. He looked up when I walked in. "Where were you?" I smiled. Walked over. Leaned down, real close, and whispered, "Doing what you did to me." He stared at me like I had just slapped him. He went white. And I walked upstairs. No screaming. No slamming doors. No drama. Just the truth. And now, we haven't spoken properly in days. He doesn't know what to do. I think he thought I would always stay broken. That I'd always be the one trying. That I'd never cross that line. But I did. And it changed everything. He didn't come to bed that night. I heard him pacing downstairs. Then silence. Then pacing again. I didn't sleep. I just laid there, staring at the ceiling fan, watching the blades spin in circles, just like my thoughts. The next morning, he was already gone when I woke up. No note. No text. I checked the bank app. One of our shared credit cards had been used at a hotel near Keystone at the crossing. So that's where he went. Not Alyssa's place. Just a cheap Marriott off the highway. I didn't care. At least, that's what I told myself. He came home that night like a ghost. Didn't speak. Didn't even look at me. Just walked into the kitchen and started opening drawers. Then he slammed one shut. "You ruined this," he muttered. I said nothing. "You planned it. You let me think we were okay." I finally looked up. "So did you." He stared at me for a long time. I cheated. Once. I ended it. I tried to fix it. You pretended to forgive me while you slept with someone else." "I didn't pretend," I said. "I tried. But every time I looked at you, I saw you with her." His voice rose. "So that makes this okay?" "No," I said. "It makes it understandable." That shut him up. For a minute. Then he threw the mug he was holding against the wall. It shattered. Coffee splashed up onto the cabinets. Our youngest came down the stairs crying, asking what was going on. Mark left the house 5 minutes later. I told the boys he needed space. But that wasn't the end. A few days later, I came home from work. There was a yellow envelope taped to the door. Inside was a letter. Typed. No name signed. Just a sentence, "You might want to ask Chris if he's really divorced." My heart stopped. I called him. He picked up on the second ring. "Hey," he said, cheerful. "Where are you right now?" I asked. "Home," he said. "With who?" Silence. "Chris?" He sighed. "Rachel," I cut him off. "Are you married?" He paused. "Too long." "Separated." "Technically." I sat down on the porch steps. The wind suddenly felt cold. "You told me you were divorced," I said. "I am, emotionally. Just not on paper." "We've been living separate lives for over a year. Does she know about me?" Another pause. No, my throat felt tight. "You lied to me." "Rachel, it's not like what you think." I hung up. I went inside, sat on the couch, and stared at the wall. For the second time in 1 year, I realized the man I had trusted had been lying to me. Different man. Same feeling. I thought Chris was my safe place. My escape. My clean slate. But it turns out, I was the other woman. Again. I felt disgusted. Angry. But mostly just tired. So tired. When Mark came home that night, I told him. He didn't gloat. He didn't smirk. He just looked, weirdly calm. Now you know how it feels, he said quietly. And then he said something that chilled me. You thought you were in control. But you were just playing a different version of the same game. I didn't reply. He walked away, up the stairs. That night, I slept on the couch. The next week, everything started falling apart. Our therapist called and said Mark had cancelled all future appointments. My oldest overheard us arguing and finally asked, "Are you guys getting a divorce?" I didn't know what to say. So I said nothing. Then I got a message on Facebook, from Alyssa. She wrote, "He told me you were cold. That you didn't love him anymore." I didn't know the whole story. Just thought you should hear it from me. I didn't respond. What was there to say? But it made something click in my head. Later that night, Mark and I were both home. I asked him, "Why did you really cheat?" He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Because I thought you wouldn't fight for me." I blinked. What? You were always tired. Always at work. Always with the kids. I felt like a roommate, not a husband. So you punished me? He shook his head. No. I replaced you. That was the mistake. He looked up at me, and for the first time in months, I saw real pain in his face. "I wanted you to notice me," he said. "Instead, I lost you." I didn't say anything back. Because I didn't know if he ever really had me in the first place. It was a Friday. I came home early from work because my patient coded and we had to call it. I was emotionally drained. I needed a shower, maybe a drink, and definitely no drama. But when I walked in, Mark was on the phone in the garage. He didn't hear me. I stood behind the half-open door and listened. He said her name. Alyssa. I felt my stomach flip. I don't know. She's distant now. Cold. She found out about Chris, somehow. No, I didn't tell her. She figured it out. Yeah, he was that guy from the gym. He paused, then chuckled. She thought she had it all figured out. Thought she could get even. She's not built for it, though. Too emotional. That last line cut deep. Like he had dissected me and decided I was soft. I pushed the door open. He turned around mid-call. Our eyes locked. His face fell. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I walked up to him, grabbed the phone from his hand, and said into the speaker, "You two deserve each other." Then I hung up and dropped the phone on the floor. That night, I drank wine on the porch. Mark stayed inside. Around 11 p.m., my Facebook buzzed again. Alyssa. This time, it was a voice memo. Against my better judgment, I hit play. Her voice was shaky. "Rachel, I don't know why I'm doing this. But I think you should know. Mark told me you cheated on him before he ever met me. He said you had a fling with a doctor at the hospital 3 years ago. That's why he was so broken. That's what made him come to me." I nearly dropped my phone. I hadn't cheated. Not before Chris. Never. Was that what Mark told her to justify everything? I sat there stunned. He didn't just lie to me. He'd rewritten our entire history to someone else, to make himself look like the victim. And me, the villain. It wasn't just betrayal. It was character assassination. 2 days later, my sister came over. She brought groceries like she usually does when she senses things are bad. We talked. I broke down. Told her everything. Then she dropped a bomb. "I've seen Mark with her before," she said. I froze. "What do you mean?" "Months ago. Before everything blew up. I was downtown for lunch with a friend. I saw him walking with her. Holding hands. I didn't know who she was. I didn't say anything. I thought, maybe it wasn't what it looked like." "You thought my husband just happened to be holding a woman's hand during lunch hour and it wasn't what it looked like?" She looked ashamed. I didn't want to believe it. I felt sick. It wasn't just Mark. It was lies layered over lies. People around me had seen it. Suspected it. And no one said anything. How many people had known? How long had I been walking around like a joke? That Sunday, my oldest came to me while I was folding laundry. He looked pale. "Mom," he said. "I need to tell you something." He pulled out his phone. Showed me a screenshot. A classmate had sent it to him. It was a photo. Blurry, zoomed in. But clear enough. Mark and Alyssa. Kissing. It had been taken months ago. Somewhere public. Looked like the mall. Apparently, one of the kids' older sisters had taken it, recognized Mark from some event at school, and sent it around as a joke. Now it was circling. My 14-year-old stared at me with tears in his eyes. Is this why things are weird? I nodded. Yes. He sat down. Quiet. Then he asked, are you gonna leave him? I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. That night, I sat Mark down. Just the two of us. I want to know something, I said. Did you tell Alyssa I cheated before you did? He blinked. What? Don't lie. He looked away. I may have said something like that. I needed her to know I wasn't the only broken one. So you painted me as the villain to your mistress? He had no answer. I stared at him. You're not sorry. You're just sorry you got caught. He said nothing. So I stood up and said, pack a bag. You're leaving. Tonight. He tried to protest. Said we should talk. Said we should think about the kids. But the kids already knew. And I was done thinking. A week later, my sister invited me to dinner at her place. She said Mom was coming. Some of our cousins. Just a casual thing. I didn't want to go, but my oldest begged me. It'll be weird if only Dad shows up, he said. I blinked. What do you mean, only Dad? He shrugged. Grandma invited him too. I hadn't known that. I wanted to stay home. But part of me, maybe the petty part, wanted to see what he'd say in front of everyone. How he'd twist things now that half the family was asking questions. So I went. I wore a black sweater, jeans, and no makeup. I looked tired. Because I was. We got there late. Mark was already there, sitting at the table with my mom, laughing like everything was fine. Like he still belonged. When I walked in, everyone got quiet. Mark stood. Hey. I didn't answer. Just sat down. My sister passed me a drink. My mom smiled nervously. Dinner was awkward. Small talk. Kids being loud. Forks scraping plates. Until my cousin Maria, never one to whisper, said, so are you guys back together now, or what? Mark looked at me. I didn't look back. I don't know, I said. Are we? He hesitated. Then came the moment. I don't know what possessed me. Maybe I wanted it all out. Maybe I was done protecting his image. Maybe I was just too tired to keep lying. I turned to him. You want to tell them? Or should I? He blinked. Rachel, don't, I raised my voice. Tell them how you had a full-blown affair with a girl from your job. How you blamed me. Lied to her. Told her I cheated first. The room went silent. I saw my mother's eyes go wide. My sister's fork dropped. Mark stood up. Not here. Why not here? I said. You weren't worried about privacy when you were screwing her at your office. Stop it, he hissed. The kids are here. I turned to our oldest. You've seen the photos, haven't you? He looked down. Quiet. Mark's face flushed red. You're poisoning them against me. I stood. No. You did that yourself. Then he exploded. I made a mistake. One mistake. You blew up our whole life over it. You used it as an excuse to cheat. To humiliate me. You never even tried. I laughed. You don't get to cry about consequences when you started this fire. He shouted, you're not innocent. And for a second, I saw it, his mask slipping. Not the wounded husband. The manipulator. The man who twisted stories, whispered lies, and called it healing. My mom stood. Both of you. Stop. But I was done being quiet. I looked him in the eye. You lost me the day you made me doubt my own worth. You lost me the second you kissed her and called it harmless. You don't get to say my pain ruined this. You lit the match. I just walked out of the burning house. He didn't speak. He picked up his jacket and walked out the front door without another word. Our youngest started crying. My mom looked at me like she didn't know whether to hug me or slap me. We didn't talk for days after that. Then I got an email. Subject, custody discussion no hi. No, sorry. Just legal language. He wanted split custody. Nothing more. He didn't even ask to talk face to face. It hurt. But it was also freeing. It meant he was done pretending. It meant I could stop pretending too. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. I kept the house. He moved downtown, close to his office. Alyssa? Who knows? I heard through someone she quit her job and moved back to her hometown. Maybe she got tired of being his excuse. Chris tried to reach out again. I never responded. Some bridges, once burned, don't need rebuilding. Therapy became a solo journey. And slowly, I began piecing myself back together. Not for anyone else. Just for me. People ask if I regret cheating back. If it made anything better. No. And yes. It didn't fix what he broke. But it reminded me I was still alive. I was still someone. Not just a wife. Not just a nurse. Not just a mother. A person. Whole, even when cracked. I've learned betrayal doesn't always look like what we expect. Sometimes it smiles. Sometimes it says, I love you. Sometimes it makes you doubt your own memory. But it always leaves a mark. I wear mine proudly now. Like a scar that says, I survived him. And the truth? I'm still unsure about love. But I'm no longer unsure about myself.